the world isn't run by people with big muscles and swords anymore, and the biggest, meanest guy in the room is going to be king. It's run by the psych warfare, egghead, 200 IQ, eugenicist exterminist. And they're hardcore and they mean business. You understand that? They mean business. They rule this earth. They've created a false reality, basically. And the final vestiges of the old system are fading away right now. They're bringing in the internet censorship worldwide every day, all over the world, Google, Twitter. They're all working with governments to shut down free speech. They're gearing up the massive prisons. They're getting ready for the giant new wars. They're rolling it all out for the global feast of wars, bioweapons, death, extermination. And all of the servants of the system. Most of the people that you see on the news serving it, they're all going to be dead too. And they're going to yell and scream and beg if this stuff gets released. And they're thinking about releasing it. That's why I'm not for a violent revolution against these guys, because they'll just release super bioweapons and go to their bunkers. You got to have an intellectual revolution throughout the system where their own technicians are aware of it. And we only got 10 years before everything's drone and robot, and the globalists are going to be able to hit a button even if the military says no. Now, if you're watching this later after all this unfolds, if we don't stop it, we tried our best. And it'll have to be an internal revolution within the globalists to turn this around. But I think we can probably still turn this around. All right, I'm going to shut up. Let's go to John in Wisconsin, then Tyler, Mike, Mark, and others. John in Wisconsin, go ahead. Listening on Roku. Watching.
Thank you for putting up your Roku channel. I have yet to actually go and put in the code, but I'm glad you did that.
Well, then how are you listening on Roku then?
Well, actually, I'm listening on Shoutcast via Roku, and if anyone's not familiar with Roku and you want to dump your cable, and I don't work for Roku, I don't work for Netflix, but you can watch at least 3 of Alex's documentaries on Netflix. You can watch all sorts of stuff through YouTube, all just having a $35 a month DSL line. You go and get a $69 Roku box. You can watch on the new InfoWars channel. You can listen to Shoutcast. You can listen to TuneIn Radio. It's a great way. Every TV in your house becomes an internet radio. Big proponent of it, and I've talked to people in your office about it before, even offered to send you one of my old Roku boxes, but I think you guys have a few around the shop now. I have a couple of questions for you on some research that I have not been able to find in the past, but just to preface that, I do have full spectrum awareness and total information analysis abilities, and I think every one of your listeners, either new or old, can get to that point just doing a little research on their own, even if they're a new listener.
It's like a jigsaw puzzle that has 80% of the pieces in. It gets real simple. And once you realize what they're doing, you see them all over the place, and you see the power trips they're on. But go ahead and ask me the questions, the stuff you can't find.
Yeah, and also I just want to say that I have 40-plus employees. I have purchased, I just got a shipment of 200 of your Citizens Rule books a few weeks back. I got all of your DVDs in the package special, and now I kind of lend them out. They're just right down the box. And anyway, and also Ben Fuchs has really helped my family in their nutritional endeavors as well. My questions actually are, which FBI or CIA official was it that said most conspiracies are real? I can't find that. Do you remember that?
I don't remember saying that.
Okay. I thought maybe it was...
What was the exact quote?
I thought it was most conspiracies, like basically he was saying that he thought his time was limited, and I don't know if it was the midnight canoeist that got waxed from the CIA or if it was Gunderson. Said most conspiracies, believe it or not, are real.
No, I do remember a similar quote by, was it Casey? Who was the guy that drowned in the canoe, the kayak? I've talked to folks that knew him, and he had been blowing the whistle on stuff. He was reportedly the guy that leaked that FLIR footage of him killing Branch Davidians. Reportedly, some folks didn't like that. I'm going from memory here. I'll have to pull it up. What was the other question?
That was William Colby.
Colby, yeah.
CIA,
Colby.
Who was found, they ruled it an accident after canoeing at midnight with half of his pajamas on and food burning on the stove. Anyway, then there was another question on, is there a comprehensive list of all of the bullet points of watch points put out by DHS, FBI, whatever, ADL or MIAC reports?
No, all they do is they have the ADL mainly in Southern Poverty Law Center write it. I mean, if you look, it's the same text word for word that's in their public reports. They just put out even more demonization privately of the veterans, gun owners, libertarians, conservatives. I mean, if you don't like the Federal Reserve, they're preparing police to arrest you. I mean, it's just open treason by the foreign banks because they're criminals. They've got to get the police lined up against real Americans that realize there's been a hijacking of the country. But basically, there are hundreds of the FBI DHS reports, and now they're pretty much public. I mean, we just showed several dozen of them the other night on TV that are on the FBI's own website. And everything is demonized. If you have a cell phone, if you wear blue jeans, if you use AOL or Comcast, if you buy coffee with cash, if you say hi to a police officer, just everything is terror, so everyone is guilty. So the police run around and storekeepers in just a paranoid daze, afraid of everyone. But one group is not listed. The federal government, who gets the underwear bomber on the plane, the federal government that flies the hijackers into the U.S. under protection, the federal government caught funding al-Qaeda, giving them Libya, now shipping them into Syria publicly. The one group that's actually running the terror attacks, Oklahoma City, Gulf of Tonkin, Operation Northwoods, Operation Ajax, Operation Gladio, NATO option. The one group caught over and over again carrying out terror, the group that stands to get more power, the group that stands to be able to cover it up, that has the means, they're the one group you can trust. They're the good guys. They'll keep you. The one group openly putting poison in our water supply. The one group caught shooting old black men up with syphilis. The one group radiating foster children to death on record. The one group 5 years ago, New York Daily News, grabbing foster children and testing pesticides on them till they die. You can trust the federal government. That's the group. Everybody else is a terrorist. All I'm here doing on air is screaming Mayday, Mayday, and giving you more documents where they are putting stuff in the water, where they bragged about putting it in the water, how they're going to bankrupt you and have sterilization vans come by if you're on welfare. That's why they want to shut down the economy so you go on welfare. The head of the UN calling for global government. It's all here. And these globalists fancy themselves as scientific dictators in their own words, and us as animals. And so that's why they just dictate to us and lie to us. Even when we catch them lying, they just keep doing it because they're following a program. And it's going to take fully awakening because to wake up, you got to admit there's a global dictatorship forming. They're shutting down free speech, buying up the media, and jacking the food and water as much as they can and trying to block people from getting non-GMO. While lobbying us all day how they're the environmentalists who are concerned about carbon dioxide, which they just use as a power grab. See, they're able to take over because they always control the major opposition. And I want to tell people that serve the system at the mid-level who know a little bit about this, I mean, you're destroying your own future. And you're like, well, it's my job, though. Well, you're destroying your own future. Let's talk to Mark in Oregon, and then we'll talk to Tyler and Brooke and others. Go ahead, Mark.
Hello, Alex.
Yes.
And Alex, I always pray to Almighty God for your successful mission and your safe journey. I really care about your welfare, brother. Alex,
thank you.
I've called today basically to follow up with you on the proposed social networking website that you said that you were planning on.
Yeah, I always get busy on other projects, but I'm going to march back there, funny you call about this, and talk to my IT people and say, look, everything else goes on hold till this happens. Because there's some kind of idea or culture. This happens everywhere. When something isn't finished or done, it's like almost like, well, the tribe has deemed this isn't going to happen at a subconscious level because it's seen as more work to do. It is going to happen. We're going to launch it.
Alex, I thought my call was really the impetus of it within me is in relationship to the Ron Paul campaign and how this would supercharge that campaign as well as spread the publicity.
Yeah, would have been nice if we had it. Would have been nice, but we were just finishing all the other work. I have a tendency to take on more projects than I can finish and let other people stick projects in front of me that aren't my project.
I understand that, Alex. But I can't think of anything else at this point, given the situation with the Ron Paul campaign being stymied in the mass media as well, is being stymied, even more importantly, at the voting booth, so to speak, in these primaries.
There's been fraud everywhere, and people say, why does Alex support the campaign but say there's fraud? Because he's gone from getting 10% to getting 20, 30%. He's clearly in first or second place, and the fraud's being evidenced. You got to send Ron Paul in there like a probe droid to take enemy fire to show the enemy's position and what they're doing and to grow the movement. So the only way you lose is not fighting. But these crooks are criminals. Of course they're going to cheat. Of course they're going to steal.
Alex, in the old days, for a candidate to dispute the results of the voting was normal, and I think that Ron Paul should do that, take him into court, and let the social networking website go to work. And
I hear you. Look, I hear you. I appreciate your call. Believe me, we're trying to get everything we've said we're going to launch launched. Okay, I'm ripping and roaring to take your calls. Ed Asner just asked to be moved to tomorrow because he had a bunch of stuff come up, and my producer said, why don't you just come on the last 30 minutes of this hour? Because 30 minutes is great. We'll just get him on then. That way I can cover more calls and your news. That's so important. I've gotten to some of it, but not a bunch of the really key stuff, which I tend to do, as you know, on the economy in Iran. Big developments there. I want to continue with your calls right now. I got off into eugenics pretty much for the last hour and a half or so because it's the big kahuna, the big issue. Tyler in Wisconsin, you're on the air. Thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Hey, Alex. Hey, first caller. I've been listening to you regularly, almost on a daily basis, ever since I first heard about you. You know, I apologize that I didn't really become fully awake until I started following you know, your efforts, and I know that you're the leading charge of this information war, so, you know, I appreciate everything that you've been doing, brother. You know, and I think really you guys are hitting close to home today. You guys have really been, you know, doing the lead of the fight, but we need to really focus on Ron Paul. You know, he's the man that's out there. He still has position in this government that we have today. And, you know, I actually received an interesting email from the campaign manager of Ron Paul within the last day or so here, talking about how they're going to be challenging, you know, the vote in Maine. And so, you know, we need to move beyond that. We also need to solve the problem by getting a Glass-Steagall Act in place, just like your guest, you know, from a few days ago, I talked about.
So what was the email saying specifically, though?
Well, if you don't mind, I can get into it here. It says, tonight I saw dueling examples of how much the establishment is scared of Ron Paul and his message of liberty. Ron Paul will win the most delegates out of Maine tonight. In fact, he will probably even win the beauty contest straw poll the media has already called for Mitt Romney, even before all the votes have been tallied. How can that be, you might be asking yourself? Simple. The national political establishment and their pals in the national media will do anything to silence the message of liberty. It is up to you. It is up to you and me to stop them. That, you know, that includes you, Alex, and me. And, you know, we're all out here doing this together. So, you know, I appreciate your efforts. And, you know,
I think it's safe to say that the audience of this radio show, and I think I've covered like 5 Ron Paul stories already today. And I'm glad Ron Paul supporters are calling in, lobbying my show and campaigning on my show. But, I mean, I think it's safe to say we've been behind Ron Paul. I've been behind Ron Paul for 17 years. It's now 17 years on air. I'd been on local radio with a Saturday night show for about a month when I was able to get Ron Paul on because his district then came to South Austin. And so I've been interviewing Ron Paul for 17 years, and I'm supporting him as best I can, and have done just all sorts of things. I mean, I have PACs on, you know, to promote what they're doing so people can get behind them. And I agree that Ron Paul has come further than most of us ever thought he would. And it's just an example of the dinosaur media losing its power, that despite the fact they put in everything they can, they're still having trouble suppressing Ron Paul.
Who's not familiar with Roku and you want to dump your cable, and I don't work for Roku, I don't work for Netflix, but you can watch at least 3 of Alex's documentaries on Netflix. You can watch all sorts of stuff through YouTube. all just having a $35 a month DSL line. You go and get a $69 Roku box. You can watch on the new InfoWares channel. You can listen to Shoutcast. You can listen to TuneIn Radio. It's a great way. Every TV in your house becomes an internet radio.
And it'll have to be an internal revolution within the globalists to turn this around. But I think we can probably still turn this around. All right, I'm going to shut up. Let's go to John in Wisconsin, then Tyler, Mike, Mark, and others. John in Wisconsin, go ahead. Listening on Roku. Watching.
Thank you for putting up your Roku channel. I have yet to actually go and put in the code, but I'm glad you did that.
Well, then how are you listening on Roku then?
Well, actually, I'm listening on Shoutcast via Roku, and if anyone...
The world isn't run by people with big muscles and swords anymore, and the biggest, meanest guy in the room is going to be king. It's run by the psych warfare, egghead, 200 IQ, eugenicist, exterminist. And they're hardcore and they mean business. You understand that? They mean business. They rule this earth. They've created a false reality, basically. And the final vestiges of the old system are fading away right now. And they're thinking about releasing it. That's why I'm not for a violent revolution against these guys, because they'll just release super bioweapons and go to their bunkers. You got to have an intellectual revolution throughout the system where their own technicians are aware of it. And we only got 10 years before everything's drone and robot, and the globalists are going to be able to hit a button even if the military says no. Now, if you're watching this later after all this unfolds, if we don't stop it, we tried our best. They're bringing in the internet censorship worldwide every day, all over the world, Google, Twitter. They're all working with governments to shut down free speech. They're gearing up the massive prisons. They're getting ready for the giant new wars. They're rolling it all out for the global feast of wars, bioweapons, death, extermination, and all of the servants of the system. Most of the people that you see on the news serving it, they're all going to be dead too. And they're going to yell and scream and beg if this stuff gets released.